Have you ever found yourself in a total standoff with a deadline? Like you know exactly what you need to do, but you just can't? Well, you are definitely not alone. And the reason why is probably not what you think. So let's get into it.
Yes, I'll get to it tomorrow. We've all said it, right? It's that classic promise we make to ourselves. We imagine this, super productive future version of us who's going to have all the energy and focus that we're missing right now. And yeah, this is pretty much where the whole cycle kicks off. Okay, so picture this. It's 5 p.m. You suddenly remember that huge report is due tomorrow, and you think, all right, deep breath, time to get this done. But first, you're just going to do a quick check of your phone. And what do you know? A new video from your favorite channel just dropped. Well, obviously, you can't work on an empty stomach, so it's time to make dinner. And before you know it, it's late, you're exhausted, and that report, that is now a problem for tomorrow morning you. I mean, does that sound at all familiar?
Yeah, that whole cycle, that is the procrastination trap in action. And if we're going to escape it, we first have to get really clear on what it actually is, and maybe more importantly, what it isn't.
So let's be super clear here. Procrastination is not just delaying something. I mean, sometimes that's just smart time management, right? No, procrastination is when you're actively avoiding a task you plan to do for no good reason, even when you know it's going to come back to bite.
Okay, now we're getting to the biggest myth we really need to bust. When we procrastinate, what's the first thing we do? We call ourselves lazy, right? But the science, all the science tells a completely different and honestly a much more interesting story. So look at the difference here. It's huge. Laziness is, well, it's passive. You're just inactive, and you're kind of okay with it. But procrastination, it's incredibly active. You're not doing nothing. Heck no. You're busy doing a million other little things, all to avoid that one specific stressful task. So it's not about a lack of energy. It's about trying to escape some pretty gnarly negative feelings. And here is the real twist. Procrastination usually isn't a sign that you don't care. A lot of the time, it's a sign that you care way too much. The fear of failing, of not meeting your own super high expectations, creates so much anxiety that actually starting the task feels like physically more painful than just not.
So, what is actually going on inside our heads when this happens? Let's dive into the science behind this whole emotional panic. I mean, really, why does staring at a blank page for that report trigger such a massive sense of dread? It feels totally illogical, right? But what's happening is your brain is just following a very, very old and primal script.
It all kicks off right here, in a part of your brain called the amygdala. Think of it as your brain's emotional core, its little threat detector. And when you think about that stressful task, the one you're worried you're going to mess up, the amygdala just sounds the alarm. It literally interprets those feelings of self-doubt and anxiety as a real, legitimate threat. Now, the adult in the room, your prefrontal cortex, it tries to step in. It's the part that's going, hey, hello? We have a deadline. But the amygdala just unleashes this flood of stress hormones, and its panicked screaming completely, totally drowns out that calm, logical voice.
And what you're left with is a full-blown fight or flight response. To your brain, that report has basically become the modern-day equivalent of a bear attack. And since you can't exactly punch a spreadsheet, your brain chooses the only other option, flight. You run, you avoid it, you escape to something less threatening, like, say, watching that YouTube video. And choosing flight, it works. For a second, it gives you this little moment of relief. But, as we all know too well, that relief does not last. In the long run, this whole avoidance strategy just feeds a vicious cycle that makes everything so much worse.
And the research backs this up. It shows that the longer you put something off, the bigger and scarier it gets in your head. What seemed totally manageable on Monday is suddenly stressful by Wednesday. And by Friday, forget about it. It feels absolutely overwhelming. The very act of avoiding the task is what makes it more threatening, which, of course, just makes you want to avoid it even more. It's a perfect trap.
And trust me, the long-term price for this is steep. We're talking chronic procrastination being linked to way higher levels of stress and anxiety, these constant feelings of shame, and even actual stress-related illnesses. That little hit of relief you get from avoiding the task, it just reinforces the habit, teaching your brain that this is the go-to move anytime something feels stressful. So, if the old advice to just try harder or be more disciplined is basically useless, then what actually works? Well, The answer is a huge shift in focus. It's about moving away from trying to force the action and instead managing the feelings that are getting in the way. It's about going from self-criticism to self-compassion.
I mean, just look at the difference here. The old way is all brute force, right? Just do it, which, let's be honest, just piles on more pressure. The new, effective approach is all about emotional regulation. It completely flips the script. You stop asking, why am I so lazy? And you start asking, okay, how can I make this feel less threatening?
All right, that all sounds great, but how do we actually do it? How do we put this new approach into practice? Let's talk about some real, concrete steps you can take to start breaking that cycle.
First up, break it down into tiny pieces. That overwhelming report just becomes find one good source, or even just write the first sentence. Second, get curious. Figure out why this specific task feels so stressful. Is it a fear of being judged, or are you just not sure where to start? Just naming the feeling can take away a ton of its power. Third, make it harder to escape. Remove those easy distraction traps. And finally, and this one is probably the most important of all, you have to forgive yourself.
Because think about it, the shame and the guilt you feel after procrastinating, that just gets added to the big pile of negative emotions, making it even more likely you'll procrastinate next time. Self-forgiveness is what breaks that loop. It's about acknowledging, hey, that was tough, and then letting yourself move forward without all that heavy baggage so you're ready to try again.
So the big takeaway here isn't some magic productivity hack. It's a fundamental shift in perspective. Procrastination isn't a character flaw. It's not about being lazy. It's a very human response to difficult emotions. And just understanding that, that's the first most important step. The next step? Well, that one's up to you. So let me ask you, what's one task you're putting off that you can be just a little bit kinder to yourself about, starting today?